I worked out with weights from 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow.
Oh, that ain't nothing. We went to lunch. At 3 o'clock we were back, and I worked out from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 8 o'clock at night.
Unbelievable.
I went to the hotel, spent the night. I had to be back there for 9 in the morning. I woke up in the morning, and I couldn't move.
Hello, everyone, at the 80s Wrestling Con here in beautiful Morristown, New Jersey. Rita Chatterton. It's
AKA Rita Marie.
Yes, Rita Marie. It's a pleasure to have you. First time on the Apter Chat.
It is, yeah. It's been a long time.
And
coming.
you were actually the first lady referee, if I remember correctly. Correct?
Absolutely, yeah. I was I got licensed in August of 1984 in the state of New York. I was trained by the great Tony Altimore, who is no longer with us.
He was one of the Sicilians, along with Captain Lou Albano.
Yes, yeah.
One of my favorite people.
Yeah, I trained with Paul Roma, Mario Mancini, some great names from the past.
They taught you how to referee?
They taught me how to. Well, let me tell you the story about.
Why don't you tell us the story?
Many years ago, my brother was killed in an auto accident. Wrestling was his dream. I mean, this is exactly what he wanted to do. The day he was killed, I walked into his room. I found a notepad on his bed of all the wrestling schools he had called, people he had talked to, how much it was going to cost him, how he was going to pay for it, what he was going to do. He had everything all listed.
Wow.
So I decided that day that I was going to do it for him. So it took me a few years. I had to save some money. I was a single mom at the time. And I called Tony Altimore, and I drove that man crazy. Nope, I'm not hiring. I'm not training referees. I'm not doing. Nope. I called this man 3-4 times a week. And yet he had in the
past, yeah.
Well, he wouldn't train me being a female.
Right, exactly.
I called this man 3 or 4 times a week. I wasn't giving up. I was like, nope. And every time I'd call, and of course back then you didn't have, you couldn't tell who was calling, just his phone. So we answered.
That's why when people do this, that's what they're talking about, a real wired telephone.
A real wired phone, yeah, right. So I drove the man crazy. Well, his gym was in Passarello's Quest.
Right, which is in Connecticut.
It's in New Haven, Connecticut, and it was owned by by Kenny Passarello, who was Mr. America in 1980 and Mr. Universe in 1981.
Right, I remember.
Well, Tony kept, nope, not doing it. Well, all of a sudden, he sends me this letter, and he calls me and says, can you come down this particular weekend? I want to start training you.
Out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. So I go down. And I had talked to Tony on the phone several times before. He's like, have you ever worked out? Do you know anything about the gyms? I said, no, I've never worked out, never lifted a weight in my life. The most I lift is a cup of coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
Well, we get there, and he puts me on this workout schedule. And again, I don't know what I'm doing because I've never done it before.
Right.
I worked out with weights from 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow.
Oh, that ain't nothing. We went to lunch. At 3 o'clock we were back, and I worked out from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 8 o'clock at night.
Unbelievable.
I went to the hotel, spent the night. I had to be back there for 9 in the morning. I woke up in the morning, and I couldn't move.
Oh, of course not.
My eyelashes hurt.
Okay. Did you feel you wanted to quit at that point?
Well, yeah, actually, because I hurt so bad.
Sure.
I just about crawled to the shower. I got in the shower. The hot water definitely helped. I made it back to the gym by 9 o'clock, and Tony just looked at me and his mouth dropped.
That you were back.
That I was
came
back.
Yeah. That was the test.
And he looked at me and he said, you remember your routine from yesterday? Tony, I did it 500 times. Yeah, I think I remember it. He says, get going. I don't want to do this. I'm only kidding. I thought I was going to die. I walk over, I get on the weights, and I start working out. And I start loosening up a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, okay. After a couple hours, Tony says to me, you ready to get in the ring? I said, yep. He says, you know what a sunset flip is? I said, yep. He said, okay. He says, you're going to get in the ring. you're going to do a sunset flip. That's going to be the finish. He says, I want you there for the count. He says, in the meantime, I want you yelling at him for hair, pulling hair, and doubled up fists.
Yeah.
And
Act like a referee.
Yeah, be the referee.
Yeah.
I'm screaming and yelling, and the whole match is going on, and everything's fine. And they go into the sunset flip, and I'm on the wrong side of the ring.
Oh, goodness.
So I just did a nosedive over the top of him. Went in for the count. And Tony looked at me and said, if she comes back, I'm training her.
Wow, that's great. So what was your first step into the professional ranks?
Oh, that was pretty interesting, too. One of the agreements I made with Tony is he would train me, but he would not help me into the WWF at the time.
Right.
So I agreed. He'd help me get a New York
Come move
license.
out of here a little bit. All
He'd
right.
help me get my New York license, but not, like I said, not train me. So okay, or not help me there. So okay. So I get my New York State license. I start getting trained, or I start working.
Now,
a
did
few
you have
matches.
a problem with the license? Because the New York State Athletic Commission forever didn't allow masked wrestlers or ladies.
Absolutely no. No,
Really?
I didn't have a problem getting the license at all. I
Do you
went
remember
down,
who the
passed the
commissioner
test.
was back
Richard
then?
Herring.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Who wound up working for Vince McMahon.
For Vince McMahon,
yes,
right.
Yes.
So Richard Herring was the commissioner at the time. In fact, that's another story. But anyway, I get licensed, and now New York is assigning me. They're just assigning me a small, little
Yeah.
3,000 people
Yeah.
shows.
Yeah.
And for the WWF, that's small.
Right.
So I'm in Glens Falls Civic Center, and this is probably my 5th or 6th time, and
Now, you're doing WWF shows. Had you met Vince McMahon or any of the higher-ups at that
not
point?
Yet. No,
Okay.
not yet. So, but what I was doing is I would call for Vince McMahon.
Right.
And I would get as far as a secretary.
Right.
And I was told, send a resume.
Okay.
I sent 9,000 resumes.
Even though you were still working for them.
I was working for them, but he didn't even know I existed.
Oh, I
because
gotcha,
I was working for
gotcha.
the state of New York.
Right.
And
Oh, you
they
were a
weren't-
licensed New York.
I was a licensed
right.
New York referee.
Right.
And the ones I was getting assigned to wasn't Poughkeepsie, so it wasn't televised.
Right.
So McMahon didn't know anything about me.
Sure.
So I'm working in Glens Falls, and I worked with Spot Moondog and Blackjack Mulligan.
Moondog Spot. I see. I didn't know who you were talking about. Blackjack Mulligan.
And Blackjack
yeah,
Mulligan,
yeah.
Mully. And after the night was over, I happened to stop in a steward shop on my way home, and there's Mully. And he walked over to me and he said, you did a great job tonight. He said, you did a really good job. I said, well, thanks. I said, but I can't get a hold of the WWF. And he says, what do you mean? And I said, well, I've been calling, trying to reach Vince McMahon, and I get as far as the secretary. I'm told to send a resume. I send the resume, and nothing happens. And he looks at me and says, you're calling the wrong person. Well, who am I supposed to call? Right? I mean, I'm green at this. Who am I supposed to call? So he says, you got to call George Scott. George
Yes,
Scott
George was the booker
is
at that
Vince
point.
McMahon's right-hand man, and
Yes.
everything goes through him before
Yes.
it gets to Vince. Okay. He says, Rita, now this is a Friday night. He says, Rita, I'm having lunch with George on Monday. He said, I'm going to tell him all about you. He says, because you're a good referee. You did a great job in our match.
Right.
He said, I'm going to tell him about you.
And he was McMahon's booker at the time.
Right,
yes.
right.
Yeah.
And he says, be prepared to get a call from George Scott.
Right.
I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking, yeah, sure. This is kind of, Well, sure enough, Monday comes rolling around, and I go to work Monday, and I come into the house, and my phone is ringing. I grab the phone. He says, Rita, Mully here. He says, I talked to George Scott today. George is going to call you tomorrow.
Great.
I'm like, really?
Good deal.
He said, yeah, absolutely. I said, okay. So the next day comes along, and again, I'm at work. I come in from work. My phone is ringing. I run over. I grab the phone. Rita Marie, please. Now, the only people that call me Rita Marie is anybody involved in wrestling.
Right.
So I'm like, this is Rita. He says, Rita, Terry Garvin.
Terry Garvin.
That's a
Yes,
name from the
yes,
past.
yes.
He says, George Scott here. He says, I talked to Mully yesterday, and I'd like to meet you. Okay. He says, can you come to Connecticut tomorrow night? Sure. Okay. I go to Connecticut Wednesday. Now we're to Wednesday. I have dinner with George Scott. He says to me, I'm going to talk to McMahon all about you, tell him about you. He
Yeah,
says, I think
yeah.
we need to get some film on you
Sure,
and take
sure.
it from there. So the next day, now Thursday, I come in from work and my phone is ringing again. And I run over and I grab the phone. I'm like, hello. And he says, Rita Marie, please. I'm like, this is Rita. He says, Rita, Vince McMahon here.
Whoa.
And I froze.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Deer in the head.
and I hear him
headlights.
saying, hello? hello, are you there? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm here. I was like, he says, Rita, he says, I talked to George Scott yesterday. He says, he was very impressed with you. He says, Blackjack Mulligan was very impressed with you, and I want to get some film on you. He says, can you be in Madison Square Garden on Saturday?
Whoa.
I mean, like 2 days from now.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
Friday.
yeah.
He's like, yeah, is that a problem? No, sir, I'll be there.
I'll leave now.
2 days later, right? 2 days later, I was in Madison Square Garden, and that's where my career started.
Well, what match did you referee?
Again, Spa Moondog and
Right.
Blackjack
I was
Mulligan.
there. I probably
Molly,
photographed
yeah.
it. Yeah. Wow. Unbelievable. So it's a matter of worldwide news now. What's been going on with Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis and all that. And what when you heard all this, what?
Yeah, I have no comment on it. I have no comment.
Okay.
No comment on it.
All right. Are you still in love with the wrestling business?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Tell us about this.
Well,
And
right
this.
now I'm working with the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Yay! The Pro Wrestling International Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Later on today, we will be announcing.
Well, this might not be aired for a few months.
Okay.
But so, in the near future,
Okay.
we will be announcing the
nominees for the Hall of Fame, the inductees.
for 2024.
For 2024.
Yes, and I will be there co-hosting the event with someone. Seth Turner. Do you have the man? This is the man.
This is the
of
president.
of the International Professional Wrestling Hall
This
of
is
Fame.
the man. This is the man.
No, you the
This
man.
is the
Who
man.
am I hosting with this year? Have you picked out a victim yet?
Well, we got Mac Davis coming back. I mean, come on. What would it be?
Oh,
without,
I know that. Well, okay. I just wanted you heard that, Mac.
What would it be without that crew?
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And because Bill, when we hire you to be part of this, we get the multiple personalities of Bill Apter. For one little paycheck, we get 10 people.
What paycheck? what paycheck is he talking about?
We're going to double what it was last year.
That's for double or nothing. I love it. I love it. Seth Turner. Tell everybody when and where this will be.
All right. Well, October 13th, Albany, New York. We're going to be doing a 80s convention during the day at the MVP Arena.
Yeah.
And that evening, we're going back to the Desmond Hotel, the beautiful Desmond Hotel, where we'll be doing an induction ceremony hosted by
Wonderful Willie.
Wonderful Willie.
If you will. and Mad Mac Davis, and you will be there.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. And
Everybody's going to be there.
Don't forget, the night before, we'll be having a wrestling event.
Dynasty.
And with Dynasty.
Chris Envy.
Yeah, Chris Envy and Dynasty. So that's going to be pretty big.
All right. As Freddie Miller used to say back in the 70s and 80s, be there.
Be there.